Slashers and zombie movies get all the attention, but it's really straight science fiction that gets the most extreme. There's nothing more dark, crazy, gory, and messed up than what you'll find in the SF movies I'm about to clue you in on. I'm Josh Tyler for Giant Freakin' Robot, and if you're looking for movies that go hard, I've got you covered. These are the most graphic sci-fi movies of all time, ranked by which movie is the most extreme. At number 12 is Starship Troopers. The movie disguises itself as a campy military satire, but underneath the glossy surface is some of the most graphic sci-fi violence ever put on screen. Director Paul Verhoeven's 1997 movie doesn't hold back when it comes to showing what happens when fragile human bodies meet razor-sharp alien mandibles. Soldiers are ripped in half, intestines spill onto the battlefield, and limbs are lopped off in chaotic, bloody fashion. The camera never cuts away. It turns every bug attack into a messy spectacle, and it treats it with flippant casualness. The propaganda-style tone treats mutilation as just another day at war, reinforcing the satire by normalizing the grotesque. Starship Troopers is gory, satirical, and unflinching. Upgrade sneaks up on you. The 2018 movie looks like a slick cyberpunk thriller about a man enhanced by experimental AI tech, but when the violence hits, it's sudden, shocking, and brutally graphic. Limbs snap in unnatural directions, faces are caved in with precision strikes, and one kill involves a knife driven through a man's jaw in lingering, grisly detail. Director Lee Wanal doesn't flinch away. He shoots the violence with cold clarity, turning each fight into a disturbing showcase of how dehumanizing combat becomes when an artificial system controls the body. It's not wall-to-wall bloodshed, but when it goes violent, it goes all the way, making each moment unforgettable. Robocop is a brutal mix of sci-fi and ultra-violence, and it wastes no time proving it. The corporate dystopia depicts is violent by design, and director Paul Verhoeven shoots that violence with a vicious sense of satire. Alex Murphy's execution alone earns the film a spot on any list of the most graphic sci-fi movies, shotgunned apart piece by piece until his hand is blown clean off, his body riddled with bullets in excruciating detail. The gore doesn't stop there. A man melts into a pile of bubbling flesh after toxic waste exposure, only to be splattered across the road seconds later. Criminals are torn apart in shootouts, limbs mangled, blood spraying in operatic bursts. What makes Robocop stand out is how it uses graphic imagery not just for shock, but to underline its scathing critique of dehumanization, corporatization, and violence as entertainment. Grotesque, satirical, and unforgettable. Scanners is remembered less for its plot and more for one of the most infamous moments in sci-fi history, the exploding head. David Cronenberg doesn't just show it in his 1981 movie, he lingers, letting the camera capture the skull swelling, veins bulging, and finally bursting into a wet, shocking explosion that becomes an icon of practical gore effects. But the movie doesn't stop there. The battles between telepaths rip bodies apart from the inside, veins bursting, faces twisting, flesh contorting under the strain of psychic warfare. Cronenberg treats violence as an extension of the mind, making the grotesque imagery feel both surreal and disturbingly plausible. While many sci-fi films use psychic powers as spectacle, Scanners makes them messy and horrifying, a direct assault on the body. Alien and Aliens are very different films, but together they cement why the franchise is among the most graphic in sci-fi. So I'm cheating and making them share a spot on this list. Ridley Scott's Alien leans into horror, and his chestburster scene remains one of cinema's most shocking moments. John Hurt writhing in agony before a creature explodes through his ribcage, spraying blood across the crew. Oh, God! The slow burn leading up to it only makes the violence more grotesque. James Cameron's Aliens shifts into action, but it doubles down on gore in scale. Marines are impaled, cocooned, and used as breeding hosts, their screams echoing as facehuggers latch on. Acid blood melts through armor and floors, making even alien deaths visceral spectacles. The Thing is the gold standard of graphic sci-fi horror. A film where every grotesque transformation feels like a practical effects masterclass in nightmare fuel. John Carpenter doesn't settle for simple jump scares. He unleashes a parasite that rips through flesh, bursts out of chests, and reshapes bodies into twisted parodies of life. Dogs split open into writhing masses of tentacles, heads sprout legs and scuttle across the floor, and human bodies melt and fuse in ways that are as mesmerizing as they are revolting. What makes it unforgettable is the sheer creativity of the gore. Every kill is a new vision of body horror, drenched in slime and latex, shot with brutal clarity. The Antarctic isolation only magnifies the terror, making every grotesque reveal hit harder. The Thing isn't just graphic, it's a relentless catalog of the most inventive, stomach-churning imagery sci-fi has ever dared to put on screen. The 1990 movie Hardware is a grimy post-apocalyptic nightmare that fuses sci-fi and horror into a blood-soaked cautionary tale. Set in a toxic wasteland where survival is already brutal, the film unleashes a self-repairing military droid inside a cramped apartment, and the carnage that follows is relentless. Flesh is shredded by spinning blades, bodies are impaled, and the machine's attacks are shown with unflinching, practical detail. The violence isn't slick action, it's messy, industrial, and claustrophobic, amplified by the suffocating set design and pounding soundtrack. Director Richard Stanley makes the gore feel tactile, every cut and spray of blood grounded in the film's rust-covered radioactive aesthetic. Hardware marries graphic violence with a paranoid sci-fi vision of technology run amok, turning a simple killer robot premise into a visceral, unsettling experience. Hellraiser Bloodline drags Clive Barker's sadomasochistic horror mythology into space, and the result is one of the most graphic sci-fi hybrids of its era. Pinhead doesn't lose any of his appetite for mutilation just because the story moves to a space station. In fact, the futuristic setting makes his brutality feel even more out of place and disturbing.
No more games.
Skin is flayed, bodies are torn apart by chains, and hell's perversions collide with cold steel corridors. The movie's reputation as a troubled production doesn't erase how extreme it gets, especially in its practical effects, which lean into flesh being ripped and reassembled in grotesque detail. The 2020 movie Possessor takes a mind-bending premise of body-hopping assassins and drags it into the gutter with some of the most violent, graphic violence the genre has ever put on screen. Brandon Cronenberg, son of David, carries on the family obsession with flesh and identity by showing killings in agonizing detail, faces smashed until unrecognizable, blood spraying in slow motion, knives pushed too deep. What makes it worse is how intimate it feels. Murders aren't clean. They're sweaty, messy, and deeply personal. You're trapped with characters as they lose their sense of self in a haze of gore and psychological collapse. Tetsuo the Iron Man is an assault, not a movie in the conventional sense, and that's exactly why it earns a place among the most graphic sci-fi films ever made. Shot in grainy black and white, it follows a man whose body mutates into twisted machinery with drills, wires, and scrap metal ripping through flesh in spasms of violence. The movie doesn't give the audience space to breathe. It bombards you with grotesque transformations, hyperkinetic editing, and shrieking sound design until it feels like the film itself is attacking you. The violence is surreal, but never less than disturbing, blending sexual mutilation with mechanical corruption in ways that are impossible to shake. More than just gory, Tetsuo is invasive, uncomfortable, and relentless, an extreme vision of sci-fi body horror that still feels dangerous decades later. David Cronenberg's The Fly is pure body horror wrapped in a tragic sci-fi shell, and it's unforgettable because of how grotesque the transformation becomes. Seth Brundle rots, peels, and oozes his way into monstrosity. Fingernails slough off, teeth fall out, and pus-filled wounds erupt as his human body is consumed by insect DNA. Cronenberg lingers on the decay, forcing viewers to witness every stage of the breakdown until what's left is a twitching, dripping husk of a man. It's shocking not because it's random gore, but because it's deeply personal. You're watching a genius crumble into something unrecognizable, both physically and emotionally. By the time Brundle becomes Brundlefly, the audience is equal parts horrified and heartbroken. And number 1, Event Horizon. Event Horizon belongs near the top of any list of the most graphic sci-fi movies because it doesn't just show gore, it revels in it. On the surface, it's a haunted house in space, but what makes it infamous is the vision of hell it drags the crew into. Flashes of mutilated bodies, eyes torn out, limbs twisted, and blood splattering across bulkheads are seared into the movie's very DNA. What audiences saw was extreme enough, but the cut footage of an extended blood orgy has given it an even darker reputation, fueling its legend as a film too disturbing for mainstream release. Unlike most space horror, which leans on tension and jump scares, Event Horizon pushes further, marrying cosmic dread with grotesque body horror. It's not just violent, it's uncompromising, uncomfortable, and memorable for how far it was willing to go in turning science fiction into nightmare fuel. And in the end, the entire ship literally goes to hell. We did our best to keep this list safe for work because YouTube makes us. So be warned that when you watch these movies at home, the visuals are going to match the horrifying levels of my description. Enjoy, and try not to lose your lunch. If you'd like to see more gore in this video, there's an uncensored members-only version that you can watch by joining the channel. But if you like this video, please help us out by doing all that YouTube stuff. Every subscriber matters to small channels like ours. Your next like may be the one that makes all the difference. Until next time, I'm Josh, and this has been Giant Freaking Robot.